Welcome to the latest video. In this video I'll be describing the entire history of BF2 or Battlefront 2, the 2017 version, the one I'm currently playing, and basically how milsims have been involved since the very beginning and how they are now. So let's begin with the Bronze Age. This was when Battlefront 2 first released, and it was a complete crap show. It was terrible. Why? The campaign was underwhelming. It was a decent campaign, but there wasn't really much to it. Multiplayer. Ugh. Yikes. The amount of bugs and glitches there were. Not to mention the limitacy in people's playstyle, and of course the pay to win. Rank up system, if you were around to see that disaster. Basically, people were able to get, I remember this very vividly because I played by myself back then, but I remember it very vividly. What you did to get upgrades was in the loot boxes that now are feature skins. And you would have to get your upgrades through there. You couldn't do it through any other. I mean, you would get stuff in-game too, but the crates were the main source, and it was not fun. Because you could buy crates, so people quickly got the best items just by buying their way. So at the beginning, it was pay to win. The only major update during the Bronze Age was the Resurrection campaign, which was a good concluding story to the original campaign, but still, it was okay. There wasn't anything to write home about. Versio was a compelling character, but other than that, it was pretty bland. Oh, let's go on some secret missions. The Bronze Age didn't really offer much, milsim-wise either. The 104th was starting its ascend to what it was now, and it was at least respectable back then. Now, I would just say this. It says a lot when Wolfie just leaves it. What else about the Bronze Age? There wasn't really too much though. I played by myself back then. I remember the graphics were a lot different. It wasn't really too fun to play either, especially by yourself, because I didn't play the first 2 years that much because I had no one to play with. It didn't really contribute much. It's probably going to be the shortest section that I talk about because it was just a crap show. There was nothing there worthwhile. I'm playing co-op right now instead of Supremacy because I couldn't find a match. How ironic. So I had to go with the guaranteed play style of what is this called? Game mode, where I can actually play instead of waiting forever to get Supremacy, and that's how it kind of was back then. The lobbies were kind of glitchy. It was not good at all back then. Let's move on to the Silver Age, because the Silver Age, pretty good, I must say. It started with the revamped progression update. This is when they changed those silly loot boxes to now you can actually get them in-game fully, for getting milestones, instead of buying your way to the top. So that was a pretty good change with the loot boxes. Is there anything else? Oh yeah. So it really just made the in-game boxes that you could buy just with skins, which is acceptable. Skins I like skins aren't pay to win, and they're cool cosmetics. So if you want to pay for them instead of working for them, okay, it's acceptable. And Silver Age, it was basically the start of the mass milsim. It wasn't when they were in their peak yet. However, they were doing pretty well. Some were starting to form around this time. I don't have the exact date of when it came out. But it was... I do know that some was starting to gain traction. COTR, I think, started, or Koto, whatever you want to call them, started to gain traction in this age. See, there wasn't really much... Most milsims were in like the Clone Wars era, and that was the Golden Age, which I'll get to in a few minutes after I finish with the Silver Age, because there's still a few more notable things in here. And one of my favorite game modes was Ewok Hunt. That was added during this age. Now, originally it was actually temporarily. I did not know this. I thought it was always a game mode once it was added, but apparently it was just temporarily added for like a limited time event. So that's a fun little fact that I didn't know, and maybe you didn't know. Ewok Hunt's fun. It definitely helped the game because Infection is a good game mode, and the way they did it, everything about it, the memes, the gameplay, was beautiful. It was another reason why Battlefront 2 gained some traction. Another thing that was added during this as well was the solo update. So this was around 2018 then, now that I know. I think it said Ewok Hunt was added March 2018. So around that time is when the Silver Age started to begin. So the Bronze Age was the smallest age by far. So the Silver Age came and helped the game out tremendously. If it wasn't for the Silver Age, the game may not have been where it is today. The solo update helped because it added Kessel, Strike and Extraction, added the other skins. 2018 was a good year for Battlefront 2. Milsims were starting to gain traction. They weren't as good yet. That would be later on. But 2018, 2019 then as well. Let me see what else. So yeah, they added the different skins, added Jabba's Palace. These updates definitely increased gameplay. This is when Battlefront 2 started to gain traction and actually wasn't a bad game anymore. Now comes the fun part. My favorite age. Well, hopefully second favorite after. But I'll get to that at the end of the video. So, my favorite one, the Golden Age. This is when they added the Clone Wars. They added the 501st skin. They added Supremacy. It was mwah. This is when milsims and clans went zoom peak. This is when everyone owned a clan. There were so many clans that it was impossible to keep track of all the clans. There were so many, but now early Golden Age is when it was peak. Now these milsims and clans were actually not corrupt at this point because they were so new. They didn't really know they weren't really knowing what to do and like how to run a clan. But they were still pretty decent at it because it was it's chill, happy, fun times. Playing the game, okay, we have to follow rules. It's cool to play together as like one skin and in a good organized format. It added also co-op, which I'm playing now. It added Anakin and Obi-Wan, Count Dooku, General Grievous. It was beautiful. My favorite age by far. This is when the 801st was created. This was, I believe, when was this added? Let me see if I could find a date on here. Yeah, October 2018. So really the Bronze Age lasted less than a year. The Silver Age lasted less than a year, I think. And the Golden Age lasted good. There were two halves though. The first half was good. The second half, we'll get to that in a second, because that is some history that needs to go into though. But this is when everyone was silly, happy, fun times. Battlefront 2 was a really good game. It was extremely active. You could find lobbies in any game mode. And the skill pool was so ranged that you could... there were just so many good people, but there were so many new people as well. It was fun. Going into Supremacy and playing as the clones in like an actual like cool thing where you got to attack the ship. That's a Galactic Conquest type stuff, but like from the original Battlefront 2 in 2005. So that made a lot of people happy as well. There were some good times. This is when I joined my first clan, which was the 42nd, which I'll get to that in a second too. Other notable clans during this creation were 42nd, was notable back then, 54th, 1st Inferno Battalion, other than every single Xbox clan that you probably ever heard of. We're talking about TSR, most of them. I'm not sure if all of them were created back then, but most of them. We're talking about Order of the Fallen. They were created during this time. Who else? I need to think for a second. 33rd Fire Division. They were also pretty notable. See, I'm a PS4 perspective, so I don't know much about the Xbox clans and PC, but there were a bunch of them. There were the Knights of the Republic. Clones of the Republic gained, or COTR gained, their mass following during this time. They got to, I think, 1,000 members. What else about this? Oh, it was also when the 801st was created subsequently-ish. But, as the old Roman saying goes... Oh, I think it's Roman. I don't know where it's from. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times created weak men, indeed. And this is the second half of the Golden Age. Now, there's still one more age after this, which is what we're in now. But this is when things started to go downhill. Basically, this is where corruption and everyone started to take their fall. Since all these people started to become power hungry because they saw, oh my goodness, I lead a 10,000. Oh, this is POV 104. Oh my goodness, I'm a high-ranking member in the 104th Wolf Battalion. Oh my goodness, I'm so proud. Yeah. Then they say, oh, I can kick you because you're not following the rules. How dare you not follow my orders? Get kicked. Oh, you have emotion? Yeah, no, none of that. Get that out of here. Bop! Yeah. And that's a true... I'm not sure what the full story is, but someone in the 801st said that they had a situation about that, where they had a mental breakdown in the 104. Yeah. Then there's people who... from COT... Oh, that! The amount of scandals going on in there, because since you have such a big server, you have such a huge pool of people, and if you're not careful on who you let in... Yeah. I mean, I'm not really that careful who I let in the 801st, but there's a little difference with how I do it. Because people who all like that just like tend to leave really quickly for whatever reason. Oh crap. They just don't really fit in, and they can't really find because they'll get outnumbered easily if they say something like really sus in chat. Now, if you see some of our talks, dark humor, it's what we thrive on, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about some disgusting things that are not jokes. We're talking about simping. Simping in other clans has, especially during around that time, COTR, yikes. If you saw some of the messages that were sent. Now, were they jokes? Maybe. However, they were between people who should not be doing it in the first place, even if they were jokes. That's not... You can't really joke about that. at when the age range is that different. And it's in a public setting. That's just no. So there were controversies about that. Then in this time, the Geatsleys 41st took form. This is when the 801st was created. So I'll make another video about the history of the 801st and the 42nd in a whole other video. Because that I need people on with me for that. This is just the history of Battlefront 2 and all the milsims. So this is when milsims started to fall. Now, granted, still the golden age. Activity still great. However, this is when milsims started to have their problems. This is all this is. And it became less fun for some people. Let's just say that. Other notable things in this, like update-wise, well, the Rise of Skywalker update added Asian class, added the instant action offline PvE mode, which I played a lot. Then the last update is the main concern here. The Scarif update. Now, the update was great. Not gonna lie. But you guys probably know what I'm getting at in a second. The Scarif update was the last update for Battlefront 2. Yeah. No more new content, because they want to say, oh, we're moving on to Battlefield 2042, which flopped immediately, because EA doesn't know how to make games. So, while the content was great during the Golden Age, and milsims did thrive, but then it was the age of milsims. So if you hear me say the age of milsims, I'm referring to the Golden Age, because this is when they were all at its peak. People were having milsim matches, fighting, like, it was respectful. But then people started having their problems. People got too power hungry, started becoming way too toxic. And naturally, it took its course. And that's when it led to the Dark Times, or what I call them, the Dark Ages. What we're in right now. Now, it didn't happen as soon as the update for Scarif released. It was a good few months. I'd say about May. When was this update released? It was long ago, I know that. The 20th. No, that's the 25th. No, that's not it. Where is it? Come on now. I can't find the date. It was around summer 2021, I want to say. Either 2021 or 2020. Now, the Age of Milsims, that lasted until like around, I'd say a good guesstimate would be May 2021. And that's not when the update, it had to be 2020 then when the update, yeah, it was definitely 2 years ago when the last update released. But the Age of Milsims, it was able to be carried, but that's when the second half began, with the Scarif update, and around that, when clans started becoming too bad. And then came the Dark Times, the Dark Ages. Let's get into this. No updates during this phase. We're in it right now. Yeah, this is when clans went. Most clans died out. Well, no. What happened also during the second the second part of the Golden Age, was milsims started merging into each other at a really high rate, creating like subdivisions in like bigger communities, which created tension. Because people said, oh, this is what we didn't do in my old server. Well, it's not your old server anymore, is it now? Yeah, no. It just created too much tension. Merges are not a good thing. I try to stay away from them once I realized what they were. So that's why we're never merging with anyone. We will die before we merge. Because we believe in a free Battlefront 2. But again, that's a whole other point. This is just the history of BF2 right now. The Dark Ages. What else goes on in the Dark Ages? This is when almost every major clan starts to die. Now, granted, there's still a good chunk of clans out there, but it also led to people just leaving the game entirely, which means that there's less people for a recruitment pool, which means that you can't replace your numbers when not your people leave, so that means you lose more people, and since you can't replace your numbers, you keep losing people, and etc, and people just are fed up with the game since there's no more updates and it gets boring after a while, which I can understand. As per, I tried going to Supremacy and I couldn't find any matches. Now that's not all the time. You can find Supremacy matches sometimes, but it's really just the remaining oligarchy clans that are basically like modern day Disney and those types of companies that would just buy out, or in this case merge, the smaller clans just merge with the bigger ones to try to keep activity, but ends up creating division, and then they try going back by themselves, but it's never the same, so they just end up dying out. And yeah, that's basically where we're at. Now, granted, they're still active in those. COTR 104 and Geasley's 41st are the main ones, mainly because the 1/4's been around for such a long time. COTR has active recruiters, and you kind of need to be active on there or you get kicked, and the Geasley's 41st also has a good chunk of players. I always see them around. Then you also have to remember that now this is just Supremacy mainly, there's all the GA clans. Those, they're small, but they would get on at a heartbeat if they needed to. These people live and breathe Battlefront 2. They're your max tanks, max aerials. Now, when I say max tanks, max aerials, I mean they're a max tank and a max aerial and a max enforcer and a max Anakin and a max Grievous and a max Bosk, etc, etc. They have no life. These are the people running the game. And the newer people who are buying the game, it's a steady slope. I can't say the game is completely dead. It's definitely dead, but it's not dead. Like, you can still find some people. It's just much preferable to play with like other people who've been around than newer people. And that causes tension because then these newer people don't have any place to go, so they just end up leaving the game entirely because they tried it out and they didn't really like it, because it's not as fun as it used to be, because it's very repetitive and there's nothing like new, and everyone just abuses like classes now. It's not a good fit. The Dark Ages really ruined the game. I mean, we still play it because it's fun for us. We have fun with it because we promote freedom, and that's what a lot of these smaller clans didn't understand. They didn't promote freedom, and that's why they died. They forced activity, which ended people just wanting to leave because they didn't want to be forced, and they didn't want to follow all the stupid regulations because milsims are dead. That's why when I said the age of milsims is over, I'm right. There's only a few that survive only because they have, I can't say competent, but they have active leaders, and that's why they survive. From our perspective, we are doing decent. We could be doing a lot better, but we're doing decent. I mean, we still have active raids, and people still show up to them. But for the most part, it's like we missed the good old days. Back in the golden age, we were really good. But again, that's a time. That's a story for another day type stuff. So that's basically the entire history of Battlefront 2, all the major updates, and basically how milsims came and went. Now again, there's still a few around. You have the commercial ones, which I call them commercial ones because they're like the oligarchies in modern day society. Then you have the sweaty ones that have smaller numbers, but they are extremely active. because this is all they play. Battlefront 2 24/7. But there is hope. Maybe not for Battlefront 2, most likely not. However, there is hope for the future for a Star Wars game. A multiplayer Star Wars game. I forget who, was it Ubisoft or something, is creating a first-person Star Wars game. As long as that game doesn't flop, they're in business. That's really all they need. They don't even need Battlefront 3, honestly. Like, they could just easily just keep updating this game. Update the glitches, and make sure they... Like, there's hope for the future. And that is what I call the Renaissance. When Battlefront 2 gets reborn into another game, or it gets updates, which is very, very not likely going to happen, especially since EA no longer has the full possession of Star Wars games. We just hope for the future that it does change for the better, and we actually find a good Star Wars game that lasts. Well, again, nothing, as a famous person once said, I forget who, nothing good ever lasts forever. All good things must come to an end. Oh, Alex Hush, Season 2 of Season... On remarks regarding Gravity Falls Season 2 and if there will be a Season 3. All good things must come to an end. Summer is over. In this case, Battlefront 2 is over. But there is hope for the future, and hopefully there is another project that gets released and helps out the Star Wars community. And then we restart, and the Bronze Age begins with the glitches, and then we go through the cycle again. But it will be fun once we reach the Golden Age, and hopefully that time will be soon. But yeah. Now this, again, this is from my perspective. This is more opinionative than fact. I can't sit here and say, this is exactly what happened. Like, no. It's more opinionative with my personal accounts of what happened during it. What I saw. Because originally I had no one to play with, then I had a few friends to play with, but then a fateful day someone came on my friend's stream while we were playing HVV and said, hey, you want to join a Battlefront 2 group? And I was like, oh, cool. I was thinking about joining one, I just didn't want to have to follow all the rules, and here we are. But then, that's a story for another day. Oh, why does it take so long? So in the end, hopefully I laugh in a second when I go to edit this video. If I was muted, I'm going to cry. Hopefully I wasn't though. But yeah, that's basically the end of the video. I'll finish out this match. It's about to end. So let's just hope for the future that there is a Battlefront 2 game that we can all enjoy in the future. Well, not Battlefront, Star Wars game. But that was the history of Battlefront 2 through my perspective. I hope you guys enjoyed. It was a new, different type of video I usually do, but we'll see. See ya in the next one.